Forget what you think about buying a small business. It's not just about the spreadsheets. Very important, but not solely. In fact, ignoring the emotional landscape is the fastest way to regret your biggest investment. I've seen SMB deals that looked perfect on paper completely unravel, not because the numbers didn't work, but because the buyer and seller missed the emotional signals. Today, I'm going to give you a practical emotional due diligence checklist so you can see the whole deal, not just the financials. Hi, I'm John Stoddard from DealFlowSystem.net. I've helped buyers close $33 million in small business acquisitions and raise $50 million in funding. If you're working full time and want to buy a small business without wasting years on junk deals, this video is for you. And after interviewing 165 SMB buyers on my top M&A Entrepreneurs podcast, I can tell you the emotional side of buying a business is the least talked about, but often the biggest deal breaker. Number one, the silent deal breaker. Why emotions matter. Everyone talks about the financial due diligence, EBITDA, tax returns, cash flow. But in the small business world, the hidden iceberg beneath the surface can sink your deal just as fast. Here's a quick story. I knew a buyer who was closing on a local manufacturing shop. Margins were great, customers were loyal. 2 weeks before closing, the seller suddenly pulls out. Why? He realized after months of negotiation that he wasn't emotionally ready to hand over the business he built over the last 20 years. Why this matters? If you miss the human element, the seller readiness, employee morale, culture, you can walk into a storm you didn't see coming. Here's an action step to help. When you review an SMB, ask, what's the emotional state of the people I'll be working with? Number two, the seller's true colors, decoding intent. On paper, the seller says, I'm retiring. He signed the deal with the broker, right? But in the small business space, that's not always the real reason. Charlie Munger would say, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. In SMB deals, the seller's real motivation might be burnout, health issues, or fear of new competition. There's 3 ways to decode this. Watch interactions. How do they treat their staff? Do they light up talking about the business or look worn out? And legacy versus greed. Are they more focused on protecting their employees or squeezing every last dollar? Kind of a lingering attachment here. Do they seem eager to move on or are they still emotionally glued to the business? Here's a story. I once met a seller of a small specialty retail shop who kept saying he was ready to move on, but every tour ended with, and I'll show you how I do it. That was kind of a red flag. He wasn't really ready to go just yet. So the action step here is ask directly, what's next for you after the sale? Then stop talking. Let them fill the silence. Number 3, your gut feeling, the buyer's emotional check-in. Before you even open QuickBooks, check in with yourself. Ray Dalio talks about radical transparency and starts with yourself. Does this small business excite me or drain me? Would I be proud to talk about it with my wife at a party? Can I see myself running it for the next 5 to 10 years? What's my worst case scenario and could I handle it? Here's a story. A buyer I know passed on a profitable plumbing company because he realized he hated managing crews in the fields. The numbers were perfect, but he would have been miserable. So you could take this action step. Before the LOI, write down your emotional yes and emotional no. If the small business fails that test, walk away. Number 4, team dynamics and cultural fit. In small business acquisitions, employees are often the heartbeat of the business. If they're unhappy, disengaged, or planning to leave, your investment's in danger way before you even start. I've seen deals where the single key employee, often the one the customers love most, quit right after closing because no one talked to them about the transition. Here's a checklist you want to follow. Employee pulse check. Are they proud to work here? Cultural match. Does their way of working align with yours? And key person dependency. Would losing one person hurt the business badly? So you could take this action step. Ask the seller who their most valuable people are and why. Then think about how you'd keep them or quickly replace them. Have a contingency plan in place. Number 5, the transition tightrope. Integration is where emotional due diligence becomes real. If the seller of a small business checks out early, you lose valuable knowledge transfer. If employees feel blindsided, you risk talent you can't easily replace. Here's a story. Warren Buffett says he only buys from sellers he'd like to keep around. In one acquisition, he let the seller stay on for a year, not for operational reasons, but to reassure the team and keep the business stable. Here's an action step you can take. Get a written transition plan from the seller. Create a communication strategy for employees that explains why you're buying it and what it means for them. Number 6, your emotional resilience. Owning a small business is rewarding, but it's not always easy. Frankly, it's kind of a hard work. Integration will test you. Unexpected repairs, losing a customer, an employee quitting, and Charlie Munger always says, invert, always invert. Think about the worst outcomes now so you're ready for them. Here's an action step you can take. List 3 big challenges you might face post close, very specific to your deal. Then write down your plan for handling each, both emotionally and operationally. All right. Financial due diligence tells you if the small business makes money. Emotional due diligence tells you if you'll want to run it and if it will thrive after you take over. If you ignore the emotional side, you could end up with a profitable business you hate. If you get it right, you'll own something you're excited to grow and a team that's ready to grow with you. So, if you want the playbook I use to help buyers go from working full time to owning a small business, grab my book in the description down below. It's only $9.99. It's packed with real world strategies to find deals, value them, and raise capital fast. You don't have to figure this out alone. You can shortcut that learning curve. I'm John Stoddard, and I'll see you on the next one.